Hey, I thought I'd start sharing a little bit about how I got started doing what I'm doing here on this land because a lot of people ask me, it's like, how did I get back here? And I'm sitting here in this copper pyramid surrounded by flowers, holding onto a crystal. And even I'm like, how the fuck did I get back here? Like what happened to me? Because I wasn't always like this. It's been a journey. Kind of started 8 years ago, where I was so unhappy with the job I was doing, and I just wished I was dead. So I contacted a life coach, and it's okay for me to say that now, but even back then, 8 years ago, I didn't want anybody to know that, and I saw that as a sign of weakness, that I needed to speak to a life coach, and but that's really where say the shift began for me, or maybe my mind began to crack. Is one of the things that he told me. There's a few things I learned from him was meditation. The first time I ever heard the word permaculture, and I was like, what's that? It clicked right away. I had to know what that was. And one of the big things, and some people get this and others won't, you are not your mind. And when he was told me that, I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? And so I know there's people out there who know what I'm talking about, and then there's people who were just like I was, who don't get that. But it's big. It was a big turning point in my life when I finally got my head around that. So yeah, that was the beginning of my journey. It took me 2 years after that where I just continued on doing the same job, and that was, it was because it felt so meaningless to me, and it wasn't such a bad job. It didn't feel right for me anymore, and it felt so meaningless, and I wanted to do something meaningful, and I still do, and it's okay. If people don't, whatever, that's fine. But that's what's in me. So I just had to stop, try to do something else. So yeah, 2 years. It took me 2 years to just finally say, fuck this. I'm not doing this anymore. I have to do something. And yeah, that happened. And even almost a year later, I'm just like, now what do I do? And I had some already permaculture education and hardly any hands-on training. I was really into the philosophy of it, and I'm still learning. There's so much to it, and I don't really ever take things hardcore, it takes me a long time to learn things. I'm still learning. So what happened was, since no one even knew what permaculture is, more and more people are now. I mean, when I first heard the word, there was only 10 things you could Google on it. Now I'm sure a bunch of people watching this know what it is, have an idea. So because no one knew, I come across this guy, Curtis Stone, about urban farming. And people know farming, and they get that, and turning people's front yards into farms. And he's saying you could make $75,000 a year and all that. I'm like, I need to make money, and I wanted to also connect people to where their food comes from, because I could see that as a huge problem, and it still is, and something I'm still working on. And I have a lot of work to do myself. Even after all these years, I can openly admit that I'm just as much part of the system, and I don't have the integrity enough. I haven't been authentic enough to like really. And I work on a farm. I still don't eat like hardly any of the food like as much as I could. I could. I don't. It's true. But I am part of the system too. I'm in the same boat. But I wanted to make, and I still do, anything I kind of talk about, I'll just bring up the awareness of it. And it's not like, look at me, I'm all high and mighty, like I'm doing this and you should be doing it too. I'm just trying to show that there's something off, and we can do better. And the government, in many cases, is not helping us in these matters. They're actually poisoning us. And I defy anybody to prove me wrong on that. It's just true. So that's why I wanted to turn someone's front yard into a farm. And that was a pretty amazing journey. I just kind of followed the steps, read the book, Curtis Stone, and did everything he said, and pretty much everything came true except for the money part. Right? Maybe I gave up too soon. Yeah, it was a cool journey. There's a lot happened in that first year, 2017. One of the big things was the neighbors freaked out. It was like, you know, a cool woman who let me use her front yard, and she had just moved into the neighborhood, and the neighbors freaked out, like, who's this chick gonna turn her front yard to a farm? And I just like show up with the tiller and was tilling the yard, and it became a whole thing. People started coming around, like drive by, like yelling at me and shit. And then it turned into like a media thing. We got into like the local news, Fox, CBS, Newsday, New York Times, all that. It was crazy. And you know, other not so cool things. I started doing it with my wife, and it turned into ex-wife after, at the end of the season. You know, just was coming to an end anyway, I guess. But so that was the first year, trying to learning and trying to make these connections and see, and really finding out that people really don't care that much either, you know. And you can't change people's minds. You can only, you know, change yours. But it was a lot to be learned from that experience. And because I did take those first steps, though, now it is here 4 years later, and you know, it's cool. I'm still on the path. I'm still on the journey. But I think I'll talk more about what happened next. I'll try to come up with more stories about all the growing of the food and the permaculture and some things here and there. But just wanted to put something out to start out with. So thanks for listening.